Hey, what's going on, guys? deadbydawn93 here, back once again, and tonight I'm going to be doing a movie review. This is going to be a review for a movie that I actually just finished watching, and it's considered a very overlooked film. According to most horror fans, it's very overlooked, and I guess you could say an unappreciated film at that. But the movie was released in 1975, and it's a Mexican horror film, and it is Alucarda, which, like I said, was released in 1975 and is directed by Juan Lopez Moctezuma, I believe his name is. Yeah, but this is the special edition DVD put out by Mondo Macabro, and as you can see, it's got really cool cover art. I also like it's got two quotes on it. I like this quote on the back. It's an unforgettable slice of 70s satanic cinema, bizarre and compelling. I wouldn't say compelling, but I would say this is a very bizarre film, a very weird film. It goes to a lot of different places, there's a lot of different things going on. But honestly, I really did enjoy it. A lot of people have called this film a B movie or a cult classic, and I really truly think it is. It's one of those movies that is, definitely not, definitely considered a good cult classic, and yeah, I think it should have more recognition than what it's getting. But I'm going to go ahead and give a quick synopsis of the storyline, and then I'll tell you guys what I actually think about it. Let me move that out. But basically, the movie, of course, as I said, is set in Mexico, and it begins with a young woman giving birth to a baby who she names Alucarda, and she's giving birth to this in this sort of this room, which looks almost like a tomb. It's opened up, and it's overrun by roots and trees and whatnot. And there's a lot of different old statues over it, old rundown statues. And when she gives birth to the baby, she ends up handing it to this nun, and she basically tells the nun, hey, take care of my kid and don't let him get to her. And you find out who him is in a little bit later on. But after the nun fleds, the woman is then attacked by some unknown force. And then you cut to 15 years later, and you are on this Catholic convent, which is basically run by this large group of nuns, basically. And the nuns, they are dressed in these white, sort of I don't want to say cloaks, I want to say sort of white gowns, and they are dressed from head to toe. Even the gown, they even have hoods over their heads where you can't see anything. And they're not dressed like normal nuns would be, where they wear black, of white. They're just dressed in completely white, just completely white, and they have these, I guess you could say burgundy, sort of, looks like stains over their, over what they're wearing, but it's actually how it's made. And and they're very, like I said, it's a Catholic covenant, so they're very, very religious. There's also an orphanage there, and this is actually where Alucarda has spent the last 15 years of her life. The first scene that you see, you're introduced to this girl named Justine, who is actually who's also 15, and she is actually there to basically live at the Catholic Covenant. You find out she's friends with one of the nuns. You're not quite sure if they're actually related or not. I think that I think that they are related, but it's never said in the film whether they are. But she's basically there to live. But Justine's basically there just to live, with this covenant, and basically there to learn the ways of nuns, and she's probably there just to learn to become a nun in some way. You don't hear anything about her parents or anything. You know that she's there. Well, while she's there, she meets Alucarda, and they become a friendship. Now, Alucarda, she doesn't dress like a nun. She's not a nun yet, but she's got really long black hair, and she's basically dressed completely in black. But the nuns, they, especially the main nun in the film, they all pretty much like Alucarda. They don't see her as anything strange or weird. But as Justine gets to know Alucarda, she does find out a lot of very strange things. She's very optimistic and very, sort of happy, and she takes Justine out. Basically. Where they're at, it's basically the Covenant just has a few buildings, and then everywhere else is surrounded by forest. And Alucarda basically takes Justine out, and they're basically frolicking around, and and whatnot. And as it goes on, Justine ends up sort of talking about death. And she talks about, if you are willing to, do you fear death? And of course Justine doesn't want to talk about it, and she seems very frightened by death. But they end up sort of finding a bit of a relationship that almost gets a bit sexual. Alucarda ends up, proclaiming her love to Justine, and asks Justine if she would die for her. And originally, Justine, of course, says no, but after a while she ends up sort of saying yes in a way, and they both become sort of dependent on each other. As they're going down, they end up stumbling across this man who's kind of this this short man. He's got red hair and a red beard, and he tries to sell them different like jewelry or different whatever he has there, diamonds, emeralds. And basically tells them, and basically says, if you have these, then they will protect you from the devil. Of course, since everybody there is very religious, everybody, fears the devil non-stop. Well, as the time goes on, Alucarda begins to see things. She claims to see things and hear voices. There's actually one point in the film where they actually stumble upon the place where her mother actually gave birth to her. And she doesn't remember anything about it, of course, but she does feel as if she's been there before. And, of course, they, strange things begin to happen. The following night, Alucarda just begins acting very strangely. She starts spinning around and screaming, and it's almost like in a dream sequence. She's in sort of a trance where basically Justine wakes up, Alucarda is completely naked, and the man that they met, that they met earlier is actually there, and it turns out that he is sort of like the devil in disguise in some way, and he basically gets the two girls to make a pact with the devil. And from that point on, the film goes into very strange, very weird, and somewhat fun ways. I'm not going to get into any more of the storyline because I don't want to give too much away, but I'm going to go ahead and give my own thoughts. Now, my own thoughts on the film: I thought it was a very well done film. It's not great in any possible way, but I think it was done very, very well. The movie's low budget. You can kind of tell that, due to some of the set designs, but the gore in it, there's some blood in it, and I must say the blood looks very realistic. There's a lot of really strange scenes going on. Like at one point, there's a scene where it's a whole group of Covenant witches, basically, and they're actually in some way having an orgy out in the middle of the woods as sort of like a satanic ritual. The film itself is actually inspired by two films. If I can hang on one second. Yeah. The film was actually supposedly inspired by Ken Russell's The Devils. It was actually released a few years. Ken Russell's The Devils, which was released in 1971, and The Exorcist in 1973. And basically this film sort of combines that, as Alucarda as being the devil, as being sort of a witch, and being in a covenant of witches, but at the same time she's also possessed by the devil. And so having those two films together, in some ways sort of helped the film, in another way it sort of overshadowed it, because you're not quite sure exactly what to go for. Of course, the two girls are supposedly possessed by the devil, but they also do things that only, that witches would do. At one point, they're in a church, and they're not paying attention. And so the nun asks, and the nun is reading out of the Bible, and she basically asks Alucarda to recite what she just said, and that actually causes both girls to stand up and start preaching, Hail Satan, which of course causes the nuns to freak out, and it ends up leading the lead pastor who's there to form an exorcism on the two girls. And I won't get into what happens to them after that, but well, you can say God and Satan sort of collide in some way. There's also a doctor in the film who's a pretty likable character in the movie, and he's basically, he doesn't, at the beginning of the film, he doesn't like to worry the nuns. He basically just thinks that Justine is sick in some way, and Alucarda doesn't really act very strangely around the nuns, so they don't really expect anything from her. It's basically Justine who seems to be, becoming weaker as she grows more and more as she is, I guess you could say, more and more possessed. I'm not, or as she changes along the way in the film. But yeah, I thought it was a really, really decent film. It's really one movie I don't hear a lot of people talk about, so in some way I think it's a bit underrated. Yeah, but like I said, if you're a fan of cheesy, well, not really cheesy, more like sleazy, just sleazy, satanic 70s films, got, sort of low budget, but very, very well acted, then I definitely recommend checking this movie out. The DVD is actually pretty expensive. I've seen it on sale for like $24, $25. But I managed to get my DVD for free. But if you can find it for a better price, I'd say around the, anything under $20, I definitely recommend checking this movie out because I think it's really, really well done, really great 70s film. And if you're a fan of, satanic imagery or anything religiously done, because even though the film is mostly about two girls being possessed by the devil, I also think it's sort of a debate between, religiousness. And you see how even people who worship, God or Jesus can also do terrible things. And I think that it's some way it sort of contrasts. And even during the film, you start to side a bit with the girls because they don't really do anything really horrible until later on in the film. But yeah, I think it's a really, really good film. Very underrated. I don't really hear as many people talk about it, but I do know there's a bit of a fan base. It's considered a cult classic, so yeah, I definitely recommend it. If you're a fan of 70s sleaze, then this is definitely one you should check out. Totally. But yeah, guys, that is my review for Alucarda. Thank you for watching. Thanks to everyone for subscribing. I've got a lot of new reviews coming up. I'm going to be doing some more reviews on, films like this. Very, just sleazy, underrated films. And I'm also going to be doing a lot more classic horror reviews on films that everybody knows. But I'm going to give my own thoughts on, films that mostly everyone's seen and, just give my own personal opinions on them. But anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed my review for Alucarda. Thanks everyone for watching, and have a good night.